Stroke patient Stan Bate is paralysed. He can't eat and drink without help. Karen Brogan is a nutrition assistant at Addenbrooke's Hospital. The team here is only too aware that a patient's survival can partly depend on proper feeding.
One more mouthful for me, and then we'll have some pudding.
They try to get me to eat the meat, but the meat is first class.
I think it's essential that every hospital that's providing care for elderly patients particularly is mindful of the need for good nutrition and to make sure people are properly hydrated.
Addenbrooke's Hospital says patients are given food on demand 24 hours a day. But this report explores what could be going wrong in hospitals elsewhere. The healthcare professionals and relatives who believe patients are being neglected, including being deprived of food and liquids. A recent Lookie's report on care of the elderly attracted over 150 emails and phone calls, the vast majority detailing allegations of neglect. Lookie's has talked to scores of bereaved relatives. They said they were concerned about neglect. They described patients being unable to reach their food and drink, left nil by mouth for days, left unattended for hours, heavily sedated, left in cold rooms, blankets removed. Nurse Sharon Hippers worked with elderly patients in this region for 20 years.
This is my concern, that they're overlooked and it's lack of resources, and just who do we give the resources to? But certainly at the moment it seems that the elderly are not top of the list, definitely not top of the list.
And the 2 or 3 words you would use to describe the state of affairs as it is now?
Pitiful and completely unacceptable.
For legal reasons, we can't identify the following case at a hospital in this region. The family of this elderly patient say they believe she was left to die.
She was starved to death. That's what we felt. She didn't die of these things that they stated. We felt she was starved to death because she had no food, she had no body weight.
In the patient's medical records, staff noted she was hungry. Her family say she wasn't allowed to eat until she saw a dietitian, who they say never came. To go without fluids can lead to death in days. Within 6 hours you'll get thirsty, get a dry mouth, headache and become confused. You'll get muscle cramps and blood pressure will fall.
You will go into renal failure, you'll get more confused, you may have convulsions and you will eventually die in a coma. It's a terrible death. It's a terrible death.
Here at the Healthcare Commission there is acknowledgement that suffering is going on. And there's talk of action.
The Healthcare Commission says it recognises the neglect of elderly patients is of great concern.
There is a very wide recognition that this is an issue in the NHS. And as an organisation, I think what we can do is to make sure that we are inspecting these issues, to make sure that we are drawing problems to the attention of trusts.
This death certificate is extremely rare. It actually shows dehydration as a cause of death. The patient had been in hospital 4 weeks. Dehydration indicates neglect, but there was no post-mortem examination and no inquest. Now many relatives believe that some doctors are deliberately withholding food and fluids to bring about or hasten the deaths of patients. Many relatives have made the claims, which have been raised in the House of Lords by Baroness Knight.
I was asked within the first 48 hours if I would be prepared to let my mum go. I did ask what exactly this meant, and he said, well, it was very simple. Fluids and nourishment would simply be withdrawn gradually until she passed away. And it was made to sound like a very calm and thing to allow to happen.
She was shocked by the consultant's attempts to end her mother's life. She refused him permission.
My mum lived for 5 more years and she saw happiness. She saw her grandchildren produce their offspring.
Leading human rights lawyer Lord Carlisle says had the consultant gone ahead, he would have broken the law.
If a consultant deliberately reduces the level of treatment, knowing that a death will result, it is at the very least potentially manslaughter. It could even be murder in law. I have no doubt that there are some fairly clear cases that will not have been prosecuted for lack of inquiry. That's not necessarily the blame of the police by any means. I think there is a tendency for those authorities that own hospitals to try and avoid trouble, and they prefer to deal with complaints of this sort by talking to the families and persuading them that nothing untoward has happened. We have to be more rigorous in examining these cases.
The BBC is aware of a case police are currently investigating which involves allegations that an elderly patient suffered gross negligence, including dehydration. Relatives, MPs and peers are among those who are speaking out about the way many elderly patients are being treated. Sally Chidzoy, BBC Look East.
And if you have any worries or questions about the treatment of your elderly relatives, the Healthcare Commission has a helpline. I'll give you the number a couple of times. 0845 601 3012. That's 0845 601 3012.